The first time I realized he had stolen from me, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the irony was too cruel to ignore. My rival didn't just swipe my signature cocktail recipe, he managed to steal the one thing I guarded even more fiercely: my heart. It all started in New York City, under the neon glow of downtown bars and the hum of restless ambition. I was 25, too cocky for my own good, and convinced that mixing drinks was the closest thing to alchemy humanity had ever achieved. My bar, Velvet Hour, had just begun to gain recognition, features in glossy magazines, influencers stopping by to sip on my creations, food critics whispering that I might be the next big thing in the cocktail world. And then he walked in. Ethan Calloway. I still remember the smirk tugging at his lips, the way he ordered a drink I had crafted just the week before, repeating the ingredients back to me as if he had been the one to invent them. He stirred the glass in his hand with deliberate slowness, his hazel eyes never leaving mine, as if to say, "I know what you're thinking. And yes, I'm that good. I should have thrown him out." Instead, I poured him another. That night, everything shifted. You don't grow up dreaming of being a bartender, at least not in a working-class Chicago family like mine. My father wanted me to become an engineer, something practical, something that wouldn't leave me smelling like gin and lime juice every night. But I fell in love with the craft, the balance of flavors, the quiet artistry in a perfectly measured pour. The way a drink could unearth buried stories and stranger sit felt like the only place where I could truly express myself. Velvet Hour was my sanctuary, the one thing I built from scratch without anyone's approval. Which is why Ethan's arrival felt like both a challenge and a curse. He wasn't just talented. He was magnetic. Within weeks, whispers spread through the city's bar scene. People couldn't stop talking about the new bartender at the Golden Finch, the rival bar 2 blocks down. His cocktails had an edge, a flair, a dangerous charm. And disturbingly, some of his best-selling drinks tasted hauntingly familiar. Too familiar. My recipes, my techniques, my stolen ideas served with his smile. I told myself I hated him, that hatred became my shield, sharp and necessary. But hatred is a funny thing. It keeps you watching, keeps you tethered to the very person you claim to despise. The night we finally collided was during the Bartender's Showcase, an annual event where the city's best competed for the spotlight. I had been practicing for weeks, hands blistered from shaking, dreams haunted by failure. I wanted the trophy, yes, but more than that, I wanted recognition. Proof that I wasn't just another name behind a bar. And then Ethan showed up. Of course he did. I spotted him across the room, leaning against the wall in that insufferable leather jacket, his sandy blonde hair falling over his forehead in just the right way, like he had spent hours perfecting the art of careless charm. Our eyes locked, and the air between us tightened like a rope pulled too far. When his name was announced as my direct competitor, I almost walked out. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled sharp, mocking, and muttered just loud enough for him to hear, "Try not to choke on your stolen recipes." To my surprise, he laughed. A soft, genuine sound that chipped away at my anger more than I wanted to admit. "Don't worry," he said, leaning closer. "I only steal from the best." What nobody told me was that rivalry has a strange way of morphing into something else when you least expect it. It starts with resentment, sharp and jagged. Then curiosity slips in like a crack in the armor. And before you know it, curiosity becomes obsession. Ethan wasn't the villain I had painted him to be. He was clever, passionate, and irritatingly charming. Behind the smug smiles and stolen recipes was someone who cared deeply about the craft, who stayed long after closing hours to perfect a drink until it sang on the tongue. The more I tried to hate him, the more impossible it became. One night after the competition, after we had both lost to someone neither of us had heard of before, we found ourselves at a dingy 24-hour diner, sitting across from each other with stale coffee in hand. We were supposed to be rivals, supposed to despise each other. And yet, something about the way his laugh echoed across the empty diner, something about the tired honesty in his eyes, made me wonder if we had been enemies only because we were too afraid to admit what we really wanted. Not just victory, not just fame, each other. Of course, admitting that was dangerous. The bar scene thrived on reputation, image, competition. If anyone knew I was falling for the man who had supposedly stolen from me, I'd be laughed out of the industry. Worse, I'd lose the only thing that gave me purpose. But hiding my feelings was like trying to hold back the tide. Every glance lingered too long. Every word carried too much weight. And then came the night when everything unraveled. It was raining in Manhattan, the kind of relentless storm that drowned out the noise of the city. Ethan showed up at my bar soaked to the bone, eyes blazing with something I couldn't quite name. He slammed his hand on the counter, demanding to know why I hated him so much. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Because you scare the hell out of me. Silence. Then, softly, almost broken. You think you don't scare me too? And just like that, the line between rivalry and desire dissolved. That night, under the dim lights of Velvet Hour, with rain dripping from his hair onto my floor, Ethan kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't sweet. It was raw, desperate, the kind of kiss that tasted like both confession and surrender. I should have pushed him away. I should have reminded myself of all the reasons I hated him. But instead, I grabbed his shirt and pulled him closer, as if letting go would kill me. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt alive and terrified. That was only the beginning, because falling in love with your rival is one thing. Staying in love? That's an entirely different battle. The morning after that kiss, I woke up with a headache not from alcohol, but from the weight of what had happened. My lips still tingled as if they remembered more than my mind dared to. I stared at the ceiling of my small Brooklyn apartment, replaying the rain, the warmth of his mouth, the way he whispered my name like it belonged to him. Ethan Calloway was my rival. He was supposed to be the thorn in my side, the face I cursed when my sales dipped or when critics compared us. He was not supposed to be the reason my heart raced at every passing thought. And yet, here I was. When I opened Velvet Hour that night, I half expected him to walk in again, dripping rainwater and smirking as if the world was his playground. He didn't. Instead, I spent the entire shift checking the door, making drinks on autopilot, my chest hollow with anticipation. By midnight, I was angry at myself, angry at him, angry at the universe for throwing us into the same orbit. The universe, of course, didn't care. 2 nights later, I found myself at the Golden Finch. I told myself I was just curious, just checking the competition. But deep down, I knew I was chasing something I couldn't admit aloud. The place was packed, warm golden light bouncing off polished wood, laughter spilling out like music. And behind the bar, there he was, Ethan, effortless, magnetic, moving with a confidence that drew every gaze in the room. He twirled bottles, laughed at jokes, leaned close to customers as if they were the only ones that mattered. I hated how much I wanted his attention too. When his eyes finally found mine, a slow smile curved across his face. He poured a drink, something amber and glowing, and slid it across the counter toward me. "On the house," he said, his voice carrying easily over the crowd. I narrowed my eyes. "If this is another one of my recipes, I'm suing." He chuckled. "Relax. This one's all me." I took a sip. Sweet, smoky, with a burn that lingered just long enough to leave me craving more. Damn it. It was good. Too good. We talked that night. More than we should have. About childhood dreams. About our parents. About the strange loneliness that came with chasing perfection in a city that chewed up ambition like gum. Somewhere between the third drink and the last laugh, I realized something dangerous. I didn't just want to kiss him again. I wanted to know him. All of him. But the bar scene had no mercy for softness. By morning, gossip was already circling. Whispers of Velvet Hour and the Golden Finch working together? Or, are they fighting or something else? I tried to ignore it, but the rumors found me. They always did. One critic, a sharp-tongued blogger who thrived on drama, published an article with the headline, "Cocktail Kings or Lovers? The city's bartender rivalry heats up." I read it 3 times. By the end, my hands shook. This wasn't just about drinks anymore. It was about reputation, about survival. If anyone thought I was distracted, if anyone believed I had softened, Velvet Hour would crumble. I couldn't let that happen. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. Pushed him away. It was cruel, the way I ignored his texts, the way I avoided the golden finch, the way I acted like that kiss had never happened. He showed up at my bar once, leaning against the counter with that maddening smirk, but his eyes betrayed the confusion beneath. "You're really going to pretend nothing happened?" he asked quietly when no one was listening. I wiped down the counter, refusing to meet his gaze. Nothing did. The silence that followed nearly gutted me. When he finally left, I let myself collapse against the bar, my chest aching like I had just carved out something vital. But what choice did I have? Rivalry I could handle. Desire I could survive. Love? That was lethal. Weeks passed. The showcase buzz faded, winter settled in, and the city grew restless under the weight of snow and holiday crowds. Business at Velvet Hour slowed, and every night felt heavier than the last. Until one evening, I got a call that changed everything. It was from the organizer of the National Mixology Championship, an invitation-only event, the biggest stage in the industry. Winning it could change a career overnight. And guess who else had been invited? Ethan. The championship took place in Los Angeles, far from the neon pulse of New York, but the tension traveled with us. From the moment I walked into the competition hall, I could feel him. His presence, his gaze, his unspoken challenge. The first round was brutal. Judges who dissected every pore, cameras that captured every bead of sweat. Ethan breezed through with the kind of charisma that cameras adored. I fought tooth and nail, clinging to precision like a lifeline. But the real battle wasn't on stage. It was in the quiet moments between rounds, when we crossed paths backstage. One night, after a grueling day of competition, I found him outside, sitting on the steps, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. "You don't even smoke," I said. He looked up, startled. "Old habit. Comes back when I'm stressed." I sat beside him before I could stop myself. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The Los Angeles night was warm, humming with distant traffic. Finally, he exhaled. "You think I stole from you?" I stiffened. "You did." No, his voice was steady, but his eyes searched mine. "I borrowed. Because I wanted to understand you." My heart stumbled. "That makes no sense." He laughed softly. "Doesn't it? Every time I tried one of your drinks, I felt like you were speaking without words. I just wanted to hear the language." I stared at him, the weight of his honesty disarming me. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe I had been wrong all along. But before I could reply, he leaned closer. Close enough that I could smell the faint trace of whiskey on his breath. "You scare the hell out of me," he whispered. And then, just like in the rain-soaked night weeks before, he kissed me. This time, I didn't push him away. We were reckless after that. Meeting in hotel rooms, stealing moments between rounds, trying and failing to keep our distance in public. Every touch was fire. Every kiss a promise we couldn't keep. The championship loomed, and with it, the inevitable truth. Only one of us could win. And I was terrified of what would happen when one of us lost. When the final round came, the stage lights burned hotter than ever. The crowd roared, the cameras flashed, and the judges leaned forward with anticipation. Ethan stood across from me, his eyes steady, his expression unreadable. We weren't just bartenders anymore. We were two men who had risked everything for glory, for love, for each other. As I reached for my shaker, my hands trembled, not from fear of losing, from fear of what winning might cost me. The final round of the National Mixology Championship felt less like a competition and more like a war disguised in glass and ice. The lights were merciless, the cameras relentless, and the room was a living storm of expectations. My heart pounded so loudly I swore the judges could hear it. Across from me, Ethan stood like he was born for this. Calm, confident, beautiful. The very sight of him sent a shiver crawling down my spine, but I forced myself to focus. This wasn't about him. This was about everything I had worked for, everything I had built, every sleepless night I spent perfecting flavors while the city outside went on without me. But who was I kidding? This had always been about him. The announcer's voice boomed. Your theme for the final round is reinvention. Take a classic and make it new. Reinvention. I gripped my shaker until my knuckles whitened. Felt like fate was mocking me. Reinvention wasn't just a theme, it was my life. Reinventing failure into opportunity, loneliness into art, heartbreak into cocktails that sang in people's veins. I glanced up, just once, and caught Ethan's eyes. The same thought flashed between us. This is it. I started with an old-fashioned classic, bold, the kind of drink my father would have respected. But instead of bourbon, I used mezcal, smoky and dangerous. I added a hint of coffee liqueur, a splash of blood orange, bitters infused with cacao. It was fire and shadow in liquid form, a reinvention of memory and rebellion. Ethan, of course, had to one-up me. He went for a martini base, sleek and sophisticated. He added lavender syrup, a whisper of yuzu, a dash of sea salt. His was elegance bottled, something that felt like standing on a cliff overlooking the ocean at dawn. 2 drinks, 2 hearts poured into glass. When the judges tasted, the silence was unbearable. One leaned forward, savoring mine, her brow furrowing as if the flavors brought up something she had forgotten long ago. Another closed his eyes with Ethan's, lips parting like he had just touched something divine. It was close. Too close. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to win if it meant destroying him. The results were announced with the tension of a guillotine. The winner of the 2025 National Mixology Championship is... I held my breath. Ethan Callaway. The applause was thunderous, the cameras flashing like fireworks. Ethan froze for a heartbeat, shock written across his face, before the crowd swept him up in celebration. He glanced at me through the chaos, eyes wide, searching. I smiled, or tried to, but it felt like swallowing glass. Afterward, backstage was a blur of congratulations, handshakes, interviews. I slipped away, needing air, needing silence. The night outside was heavy with California warmth, the city sprawling like a glittering sea. I told myself I was fine, that I had fought well, that velvet hour would survive without a trophy, that losing didn't matter. But the ache in my chest told a different story. And then he found me. Hey! His voice was quiet, stripped of its usual bravado. He still wore the medal around his neck, but it looked heavy, like a chain. Congratulations, I said, forcing steadiness into my tone. He shook his head. Don't do that. Do what? Pretend like this doesn't matter. Pretend like we don't matter. His eyes burned, his fists clenching at his sides. I didn't want to beat you. I didn't even care about winning. All I could think about was you. The words landed like a punch. I wanted to believe him. God, I did. But the fear of being consumed, of being destroyed still clawed at me. You got what you wanted, I said bitterly. The trophy, the spotlight, me losing. His face twisted, hurt flashing like lightning. Do you really think that's all I want? I didn't answer, couldn't. So he stepped closer, voice raw. You're so scared of being hurt that you're willing to hurt me first. But I'm not your enemy. Damn it. I never was. And just like that, the dam inside me broke. I don't remember who moved first. Maybe it was him, maybe it was me. But suddenly his hands were on my face, my lips crushed against his, the metal clinking faintly as he pulled me in. It wasn't a kiss of victory. It was a kiss of surrender, of desperation, of 2 men clinging to each other like drowning souls. When we broke apart, I was shaking. Not from fear, from relief. I don't care about the trophy, he whispered, forehead pressed against mine. I just want you. And for the first time, I let myself believe him. But love isn't that simple. When we returned to New York, reality sank its teeth into us. The bar scene buzzed with the news. Ethan Callaway, national champion. The Golden Finch thrived under the spotlight, while Velvet Hour struggled in its shadow. Customers flocked to him, not me. Critics wrote about him, not me. And yet, every night, after the bars closed and the city fell quiet, we found each other. Sometimes in his apartment, sometimes in mine, sometimes in the back room of one of our bars with only the hum of refrigerators as witness. Those moments were ours. Raw, secret, untouchable. But secrets have a way of poisoning even the sweetest love. One night, as we lay tangled in his sheets, I whispered the fear I had buried for months. What if they find out? He traced lazy circles on my arm. What if they do? They'll say I'm weak, that I lost because I was distracted, that I let you win. He went still. You think I didn't earn it? I froze, realizing too late what my words implied. That's not Ethan. That's not what I meant. But his jaw had already tightened, his eyes darkened. Maybe you don't trust me after all, he said quietly. And just like that, the air between us fractured. The days that followed were sharp and cold. He threw himself into the golden finch, working longer hours, chasing perfection like it was salvation. I buried myself in velvet hour, fighting to keep it alive, pretending that my heart wasn't breaking every time I passed his street. We stopped texting, stopped calling, stopped meeting, felt like losing twice, once to the trophy, once to love. But fate wasn't done with us yet, because a month later, the city announced a collaboration event, a charity gala, hosted by both Velvet Hour and the Golden Finch. We would be working side by side again, whether we liked it or not. When I saw his name on the flyer, my chest tightened. This was our chance. Our second chance. Or maybe our final undoing. The gala was a blur of silk dresses, sharp suits, and champagne laughter. The kind of event where everyone pretends to care about charity but really just wants to see and be seen. Velvet Hour and the Golden Finch stood side by side at the centerpiece bar. A collaboration no one thought possible. And yet, here we were, Ethan and I, dressed in tuxedos, forced to perform like nothing had ever happened. He looked devastatingly good. Of course he did. His sandy blonde hair was perfectly tousled, his hazel eyes calm and unreadable. He didn't glance at me once as he shook drinks with practiced ease, his every movement polished and precise. I hated him for that, hated how he could pretend so easily. And yet, I couldn't take my eyes off him. The night dragged on, a carousel of clinking glasses and fake smiles. Guests oohed and awed over Ethan's creations, showering him with praise. My drinks were well received too, but I could feel the difference. He was the star. I was the shadow. At one point, a wealthy investor leaned in close, laughing too loudly at Ethan's jokes, touching his arm like she had every right. Something ugly twisted in my chest, something I didn't want to name. I slammed a shaker harder than necessary, spilling droplets across the counter. Ethan's eyes flicked to me just for a second, quick, sharp, unreadable. Then he looked away. It was unbearable. By the time the gala reached its peak, with a live band playing and the crowd swaying under golden lights, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed Ethan's wrist as he turned to grab another bottle. Outside, I hissed. He froze, eyes flashing, then set the bottle down. Without a word, he followed me out through the back doors into the cool night. The alley was quiet, the muffled hum of music bleeding through the walls. We stood there, breathing hard, the distance between us thick with everything unspoken. You're really going to ignore me all night? I snapped. He folded his arms. You made that easy when you decided I wasn't worth trusting. I flinched. That's not what Yes, it is. His voice was low, dangerous. You think everything I've done, everything I've earned, is because I took it from you. You can't see me as anything other than your rival. That's not true, isn't it? He stepped closer, eyes blazing. Tell me then, what are we? Because I can't keep doing this wanting you in the dark, being your secret when all I want is to stand beside you in the light. His words cracked something inside me, something I had been holding together with denial and fear. I wanted to tell him the truth, that I loved him, that I was terrified of losing myself in him, that I didn't know how to be both his rival and his lover. But the words tangled in my throat. So I did the only thing I could. I kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was years of longing, months of pain, weeks of silence, all crashing together in one desperate collision. His hands clutched my jacket, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. When we finally broke apart, our foreheads rested together, breaths mingling in the cold air. "I hate you," I whispered, voice shaking. He laughed, breathless. "No, you don't." And he was right. We went back inside, but everything had changed. The tension was gone, replaced by something quieter, steadier. We moved in sync, pouring, shaking, serving, like two halves of the same rhythm. Guests noticed, some whispered, some smiled knowingly, but for once, I didn't care. When the night ended and the last glass was washed, we lingered in the empty bar. The chandeliers dimmed, the city humming outside. He leaned against the counter, watching me. "So, what now?" I took a deep breath. "Now, we stop pretending we're enemies." His brow arched. "And start what?" I smiled, small but real. "Start building something together. Not Velvet Hour or the Golden Finch. Us." He was quiet for a long moment, studying me like he was memorizing the lines of my face. Then he nodded, slow, certain. "Us." The weeks that followed weren't perfect. We argued. We clashed. We stumbled through the mess of balancing rivalry and love. But every night ended the same way, laughter spilling into kisses, kisses into whispered promises. Velvet Hour survived. The Golden Finch thrived. And somehow, in the chaos of competition, we carved out a space that was ours alone. Not as rivals, not as enemies, as lovers. Months later, on a quiet evening in New York, Ethan and I stood behind the bar at Velvet Hour. The place was closed, the lights soft, the bottles glowing like jewels. He was experimenting with a new drink, brow furrowed in concentration. "Here," he said, sliding the glass toward me. "Tell me what you think." I took a sip. Sweet, smoky, with a twist of citrus. It was good. Too good. I set the glass down, smirking. "You stole this from me." He grinned, leaning in close. "No, I stole you. The recipes were just a bonus." And before I could argue, he kissed me again. This time, I didn't fight it. This time, I kissed him back, knowing finally that love, like the best cocktails, was meant to be shared. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.